Arknights had its global release back in January of 2022, and it has some of the best gameplay, story, and music I've ever seen from a game. It is a gacha game, which means you'll be sacrificing children to please RNGesus, but aside from that small crime, it is an amazing game. Now you may ask, what happened after release on global? Well, it released to absolutely the world's shittiest ad campaign. I swear to God, somebody at YoStar was actively working to try and bankrupt the company. The ad campaign tried to make the game die quicker than a newborn in a Hadron Collider. It straight up feels like they hired someone who hates the game. For the second time, that is. But aside from what the ads might make you think of the game, it's one of the best gacha games out there. Now, if you've ever played any gacha game before, you may be wondering to yourself, how will this game try and put me into bankruptcy? Well, that's a great thing. It won't. Most of the time. The gacha is actually very generous. The pity rates aren't pitiable, and you don't need to fish for duplicates of a character to make them viable. Now, I said most of the time because the limited banners will try to rob you like you're a tourist in Costa Rica, but more on that hellspawn later. For now, let's focus on the best selling point, the gameplay. Now, it is a tower defense, which immediately sounds like some of the most boring shit. Believe me, I know. I don't know why, but I find 90% of tower defenses to have the most mind-numbing gameplay possible. But it's not a stretch to say Arknights is the best tower defense ever made. That probably ain't saying much as it is a dying genre, but still. If you get the game for the price of zero, for its gameplay, you will not be disappointed. Honestly, it's hard to even pinpoint why the gameplay is good. I mean, the synergy you could have between operators makes it so you can clear stages in damn near any way imaginable. You know that boss which took you hours to beat despite having a fully built squad and has now made you afraid of America because of the word patriot? Well, guess what? Someone beat that with 2 operators, one of which people call one of their worst 6 stars. You know how they did that? Synergy. And, you know, a brain. And that's a big thing behind Arknights. The game can be cleared with just 4-star units, you just need to be big-brained enough. For example, a YouTuber cleared IS-2 with just 5 4-star snipers. Whilst my run looked a little, carried, you might be able to say. But almost every stage in the game can be cleared with just 4 stars, which are the most common units in the gacha. You just need to think hard enough. However, I do think one aspect of the gameplay which helps make it the best tower defense is just how much new mechanics they introduce. Near Light made the game into a puzzle as you find where to face your units. The Solace had you make your own ground. Dark Knights brought in that one baby on an airplane, Undertides brought in cancer, Organium Dust brought food for Saga, and Twilight of Walamone brought in fear. With almost every new event, Hypergriff finds some way to shake up the gameplay, which helps keep it from feeling stale. Granted, that also means with every new event the player base loses their sanity, but it's fine, we're gacha players, we're used to the pain. At this point you could basically call us masochists. However, with how Hypergriff has shaked up the gameplay, I want to focus on one permanent game mode which came out recently. Integrated Strategies is the best thing to happen for this game. To sum it up, it's a roguelike game mode with 3 different endings you could get, and it has more than 200 relics, which ensures every run feels different than the previous run. And there is zero restriction on how busted your team could get in this game mode. One person got a good combination of relics and soloed the second ending's boss, and even then they could have gotten better relics. Such crazy shit could happen. Or you could get a poison map with no healers and watch as your team dies when you realistically have nothing to save the run, as Twitch chat roasts you. I don't speak from experience, so I'm goated in it. I can't even chat shit. I literally can't even chat shit. But having a mode like this where you get started up wherever you want without having to use sanity, and you just get to play the game is amazing. At the very least, when this game mode beats your ass, you could cover that pain up with the music. Now, people call Hypergriff a music company that also makes games as a side hustle. It's a meme in the community, but that shit is factual. I'm pretty sure all profits this game makes is immediately wired to the pockets of music producers to then make songs for the game. Almost every 6-star has their own unique theme ranging from rap to eldritch horrors to whatever the hell this is.
The serotonin keeps us floating, we contemplate our lives.
They made so many songs to the point where they made a website dedicated to playing songs. With how much that must have cost them, I'm surprised they had the funds to make the worst ad campaign possible. But you could tell it's worth it when some players are more hyped for a 6-star theme than the operator themselves being released. Now unfortunately, since it's a mobile game, many of the tracks aren't in the game, as phones just ain't built like that yet. But the fact that so much work is put into the music of the game just because the fanbase will like it is amazing. They straight up don't need to do it, yet so much music is made anyway. Which is something I want to talk about. That's how Hypergriff doesn't treat their player base like walking wallets. For example, in many other games you could see the developers making decisions to just further profits, and they don't give a shit about the player base. Yet Hypergriff does stuff that isn't the best for profits, but it's what the fans want. For example, they recently released Korean and English voice packs in the game, so now it has 4 languages the characters speak in. That wasn't necessary at all. The game could have just continued with Japanese voices and I doubt anyone would really care. And the best part is, the English voices aren't ass. Now, most of the time everyone makes fun of the person hearing stuff in the English dub because, well, it's dog shit. But some of the voices in English I prefer to the Japanese voices I've been hearing for more than a year and a half.
Codename Phantom. The phantom behind the curtain. Gaspard de la Nuit. Tell me, who are your enemies? And where do they hide?
God, I wish I had that voice. Hell, a CGI cutscene was made for the current event. Nobody was asking for it, but we got it anyway. And during the event, you could get around 52 to 66 rolls for free, which is much better compared to Genshin, which gives you about 3 rolls and a thank you, which feels like Artesian Builds wrote it. Now, I don't wish to sound like the game has nothing bad in it. I mean shit, the limited banners exist for God's sake. On the limited banners, you get 24 rolls for free, which is great, but you only have a 70% chance to get a rate-up operator, of which there are 2, and you have a 30% chance to get an off-rate unit. Now, that's alright, but it could lead to some moments of, bad RNG. Thankfully though, a spark system exists. It only takes 300 pulls to guarantee a 6-star limited unit. Only 300. Which also stands true for the limiteds that came out more than a year ago. Now, I would say the best part is when Hypergriff said they would only have 2 limited banners a year. And now we have 4 a year, which is obviously to have good profits to report on in each quarter. Just because the game has generous gacha doesn't mean all elements of it are generous. I don't really have many other grievances with the game except for summer. Yep, the whole season. You see, Hypergriff has what feels to be a tradition. Every summer some controversy happens, and they look to be building up in intensity. It's like they're building up a combo on us. We're yet to get a summer event that hasn't angered the player base, and the next summer event's coming out soon on CN, so I can't wait to see what shitstorm happens then. Now I will say they definitely learn from their mistakes, but summer is still the kryptonite of this game. Now summer may be the worst thing in Arknights, but I'm going to talk about what I believe is the best part of it, the story. Now, Arknights' story is a little bit, long, and that's maybe partly due to how every character is Plato's sibling. I swear, even the unnamed NPCs break out into some of the most philosophical shit known to man. And let's not even get started on Kelshi, a character who talks so much to the point where the player base rejoiced when she was told to shut the hell up. It really isn't an understatement to call the story of this game a novel. Because the translation is so bad, that resulted in some very literal translation from Chinese to English, but that made the English version feel very bloated. Now, I don't know too much about Chinese, but I believe it isn't as specific as English. So when the story deals with very abstract topics, the Chinese version explains it in varying ways, whilst the English one says it, then repeats that concept 10 more times. It really says something when a certain scene in Chapter 8 had the CN community saying it was the highlight of the chapter, some of the best shit they ever saw written, whilst Ian wanted to stop reading after getting a quarter of the way into the scene. But recent events have had much better pacing. Break the Ice was much more concise than every event prior, so that shit went by in the blink of an eye. But despite the localization problems in the story, it's still my favorite part about the game. I don't plan to spoil anything, but an example of how good the story is can be found in the game's first arc. At the start, we're introduced to the villains of the story, and they seem kinda bland. But as the chapters progress, you get to see how much thought was put into the characters, and some of them ended up being amongst my favorite villains in fiction. Except for Mephisto. Yeah, fuck that bitch. And the world building has been amazing. It quite literally beats out a lot of fully fledged stories with how much thought and effort was put into building the world. The only thing that feels off about the world is how little guys there are in it. I swear to God, males are a dying breed in Terra. Hell, even some of them have resorted to the survival tactic of switching sides just in case a gender war breaks out. Honestly, the fan base needs to make a theory about that shit. I mean, I've seen weirder theories. That aside, with the way the plot, world, and characters come together to create the story, it's really wonderful. Arknights is one of the few stories that feel like characters living in a world, and the story grows from there, as opposed to characters going through the world because of the plot. For example, Silver Ash was a release operator, and in his file you notice that, yeah, he's kinda sus. Then in Break the Ice, you're invited out to Kierag, and when you learn more about the state of the city, you could find out how it has shaped and molded his character. The ideas they presented about Silver Ash on the release of the game are fully explained when you visit his country, and that event was released more than 2 years after the release of the game, which is maybe a bit of a problem because we get so many questions about the story, only to have to wait years before they're answered in game. Which, after saying that out loud, maybe gacha players are masochists. Huh. Anyway, CBT aside, Arknights continues to enrich its story after every event, and the localization of them is getting much better. And with every new story release, I'm always excited to see how they continue to build the world and the events happening in the story. I think when most of the story threads are wrapped up, the game will have one of the best stories I've ever read. So if you ever thought about playing, now would be the best time. Kinda, especially because the Lings banner is happening right now, which is why I waited until this event to make the video. Because if you make an account and reroll until you get her, you could kinda have her solo you through like 90% of the stages in the game. Generally, it will take time to build up the right units for the roguelike, but if you get her, she's kinda all you need for the beginning. So while Arknights may have an overwhelming amount of content at first, there's no better time to start than now, because that backlog of events is only gonna grow, so you might as well just start now if you've ever thought about playing. The price is free and you will not be disappointed by this masterpiece.